I'm going to go ahead and get started. So first, thank you everybody for attending. Good morning. It's truly inspiring to see so many people gathered here today. This is our inaugural Incarcerated Scholars Conference. So today isn't just a meeting, it's a milestone. This past year's Pell Grant reinstatement is a turning point, opening doors that were locked for nearly 30 years. This reinstatement marks the start of something remarkable, a new era where education in prison is not only possible, but a priority. And let's recognize that we're gathering here in a world transformed by COVID. The pandemic forced us to rethink how we connect, work, and learn across distances. Technology and remote work, once outliers, have become the norm, accelerating possibilities we hadn't imagined. Imagine what this means for incarcerated scholars. The chance to join a virtual classroom, to engage with mentors, to connect with communities that they will one day rejoin. This conference is about equipping people to rejoin society, not as strangers, but as contributors, as neighbors, as family members. Today, we're here to affirm that education belongs everywhere. To realize this, we must go beyond theory. It has to be put into practice. Reading about community engagement, for instance, isn't the same as practicing it. Just as you wouldn't expect someone to read a book on basketball and then play flawlessly in a game, we can't expect people to read about reentry and suddenly navigate the complexities of life on the outside. Real preparation requires simulated experiences and connection. It's not enough to discuss theoretical knowledge. We need to create spaces that allow people to engage in it. This is why today's conference is so important. It's an opportunity for incarcerated scholars to connect with the public, to share their work, practice engagement. It allows them to experience a sense of belonging to a community beyond prison walls, a critical step in building the confidence and connections that will one day be their reality. Excuse me. Before I go any further, I want to acknowledge the immense amount of work that our team has done over the past 8 months, coordinating and planning this conference, begging for approvals and clearance so that our fellow incarcerated scholars could have a chance to present over the next 2 days. This was a hell of a feat to pull off. So kudos to the entire Alliance team for all the work that you put in to make this possible. While many correctional agencies and facilities were adamant about ensuring that their residents would be able to participate, a vast majority were completely averse and even fearful of what an incarcerated person may say if they had the mic in a public forum. I get it. I can understand why. If anyone's been following American politics lately, I can understand why everyone is a little fearful of who we let hold the mic these days. And I don't blame you for that. That being said, some of the conversations with corrections have been nothing short of interesting, to put it lightly. I even had a conversation where I had to convince someone that a discussion on reentry strategies isn't some elaborate scheme to stage an actual escape. No, a presentation on trauma-informed pedagogy is not a covert operation to incite rebellion. No, really, it's just a presentation about pedagogy in the prison classroom. I promise you, we're not here. I promise you, we're here for academic discourse, not a riot. The truth is, what we're doing here today isn't about disruption. It's about construction. Think about that. It's about construction. We isolate individuals, often under conditions so restrictive that people on the outside have a hard time even imagining it. Then when release day comes, we're surprised when reintegration feels like jumping onto a speeding train. We're told that learning builds a bridge, but isolation and erasure turns that bridge into a cliff. This kind of disconnection actually undermines everyone's safety and security. So the knowledge being shared today doesn't weaken security, it fortifies it. People who are invested in learning, who have a chance to grow, don't just change their own lives, they enrich ours. A person who's connected to their purpose, who's invested in learning, is a person who's a positive force in their community, inside or out. This may sound weird to some, but as a formerly incarcerated person, I care deeply about the well-being of correctional officers. Even they feel the difference when they work in facilities that promote growth. They themselves feel like they are working in a more humane environment. And the benefits of education spans to families who see their loved ones pursuing purpose. Access to education impacts the children of incarcerated people, creating a legacy of learning that breaks the cycle of incarceration. Children are more likely to pursue education when their parents do. Communities benefit when individuals return with more skills, stronger connections, and a deeper sense of self. So to everyone in attendance, thank you for being here, for believing in this vision, and for helping turn it into a reality. Welcome to the Incarcerated Scholars Conference, where together we're not just observing history, we're making it. And while we don't have hundreds of presentations this year, we know that as technology makes its way into prisons in the coming years, we will see much more engagement, more presentations, and we look forward to that. Now, before we move into our fireside chat with a few special guests, I want to share a letter from a retired warden who has also been one of my best friends and mentors over the past 6 years. This is going to be tough to read a little bit, but it's something that I've been holding, and he said, you should share it. You should share it today. So here goes. Dear colleagues, I've spent much of my career in corrections, and I've come to understand the complex, often unseen ways that the power structure within our field can affect us, how it can challenge our integrity, shape our morals, and redefine our roles as enforcers. This is work that calls us to use power carefully, ethically, and with deep respect for those in our charge. In our positions, integrity and ethics aren't just ideals, they are essential safeguards against the potential for abuse and dominance that comes with authority. I'm reminded of my own experiences, moments when the drive to enforce rules or keep order blurred the lines of fairness and compassion. I've seen transformations happen in guards that didn't arise from any innate evil in the guards themselves. Rather, it stemmed from the power structure they were embedded within and the implicit expectations tied to their roles. One of the greatest risks we face in corrections is the subtle, unintentional erosion of our integrity. Working in an environment where control is central to the mission can blur the lines between appropriate authority and abuse of power. Over time, even the best of us can start to see authority as the ultimate goal rather than the responsibility it truly is. This shift can lead us down a path where we focus on enforcing rules at any cost, rather than serving as guides who model fairness, respect, and humanity. Abuse of power often doesn't begin with the blatant wrongdoing. Instead, it creeps in slowly, often masked by routine practices and the demands of maintaining order. When we start to see those under our watch as merely numbers, troublemakers, or them, we risk slipping into a mindset where control becomes paramount and compassion and empathy fall by the wayside. In these moments, our sense of integrity and ethics, our moral compass, is our only true guide. Integrity in this work means holding ourselves accountable to the highest ethical standards, even when no one else is watching. It means asking ourselves not just if something is permitted, but if it is right. Each of us has felt the weight of authority. It's natural in this environment, but authority should never drift into dominance or serve as a tool for punishment. True integrity requires that we see ourselves as protectors of justice, not enforcers. He referenced the Stanford Prison Project, something that I reference often. The Stanford Prison experiment highlighted a truth that all of us must keep in mind. Ordinary people, when placed in positions of unchecked authority, can become agents of harm without even realizing it. Power, if left unchecked, has a way of reshaping our morals, leading us to actions that may conflict with our core values. In corrections, we must be constantly vigilant about the impact of our roles, about the impact our roles have on us, and how our actions affect those we serve. Our moral responsibilities extend beyond enforcing rules. They call us to treat each person as someone capable of growth and change. This is how we uphold not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of justice and fairness. It's a conscious decision, one we must make every day, to avoid seeing ourselves as mere enforcers of punishment. Instead, let's be guardians of dignity for both the individuals we serve and for ourselves. Each day presents us with choices that, when guided by integrity, can lead to a more just and humane environment for everyone. Let us remember that in corrections, it is not power itself that defines us, but how we choose to wield it. By making that choice with intention, ethics, and respect, we can ensure our roles are not about domination, but about a higher calling: to serve justice with humanity, honor, and compassion. I urge you to stay grounded, to regularly examine your role and the impact it has on you. Don't let the tools of authority granted to you turn you well-intentioned people into enforcers of harmful practices. We have a chance to operate in a system of power without letting it define or corrupt us. Thank you for your commitment, and thank you for every step you take toward making corrections a place of integrity and justice. With respect, Warden, I'm not going to say. So I'll pause there and give you all a second to just reflect on these remarks. And we're about to move into the fireside chat. And I am extremely honored to have two colleagues with me today who are on the ground, in the work. They put everything on the line, and they have a deep understanding of what it takes to do this work in a meaningful way. So I'd like to invite Shannon Ross and Victoria Scott up with me. All right. Hey, Shannon. Hey, Victoria. Thanks for being here.
So for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of nervous now because I'm here with the real folks. So I'm going to ask you both to just give a quick introduction of who you are and the work that you do and what drives you as you do this work. So Victoria, if you don't mind getting us started.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Victoria Scott. I am a bachelor's student at the University of Maine at Augusta in an interdisciplinary degree for justice studies and transformative systems planning with a minor in psychology, and an inaugural Alliance fellow, and worked on our education and action field guide project. I am a social justice warrior. I am a fighter for fairness and in general, just a policy nerd. And I'm so glad to be here having this discussion about the benefits of prison education and the transformative power of learning. Shannon?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you as well, Jed. Jesus Christ, I just texted somebody named Jed earlier and it's in my head. Apologies. That is crazy. That's all right. No, thank you, Ved, genuinely for inviting me, and I hope I can be of some use to this panel. Any information, insight I have from my experience. I am the executive director of an organization called The Community, which was started when I was incarcerated, and some loved ones allowed me to be in a position to push forward on this idea that I had, which is now 10 years later, as of December, a full-fledged organization with a team of 6 people. And, I think we're doing some good work across the country to create pathways to success and to empower folks that have a record to understand what's possible for them and open up opportunities for those individuals in society. Along with that, I pursued my college education inside. I got my bachelor's degree when I was incarcerated. I was able to get my master's post-release, which I also started while I was incarcerated. And now I'm in the higher education, in prison and post-prison field, in a couple projects across the country. So again, thank you very much, and happy to be here.
Thank you both. So I want to invite you both to kind of share or just reflect on, a little bit of your personal journey, what inspired you to advocate, and even participate in higher education in prison. So we'll start with Victoria again.
Thanks, Bud. Gosh, it's been such a long journey, a long road, and it's true what they say about it's the journey and not the destination, because the work is never truly finished, is it? So every step is really worthwhile and you build strength in that. So what inspired me was the fact that this is my first time ever having a run-in with the law and being incarcerated. I knew that I was going to be here on an extended sentence. And I was excited to have the time and the space to really invest and dedicate and build myself, to be forcibly separated from my former environment and to kind of reorient my idea of myself and what my future could be. And I was incredibly disappointed when I found that the women serving extended sentences at the higher security facility did not have matriculated college degree programs available to them. There were classes you could take here and there, but most of them weren't for credit. And there was no degree enrollment for women. And that was simply unacceptable. So that really filled me with a passion and a drive to advocate why I wanted to use every moment of my time in my sentence to learn and to grow and to become someone who could be seen in a different light for more than just my rap sheet, and to make sure that I didn't leave prison empty-handed several years later, a decade later, So that's what inspired me.
For me, it's difficult to answer questions like that because I wish I had some like key moment where things just clicked. I always envy folks that can give some epiphany answer to stuff. I feel things are always a slow cook in my life, and it was just early in my incarceration, things that I had experienced before incarceration, mixing with things that I was experiencing while I was incarcerated. My family, my aunt was pushing me to pursue higher education because they were like, we can pay for some classes, and I was definitely not interested in that at first. Because when you first get locked up in a long sentence, you're kind of, what do I do? What's the end game here? Is there an end game? And I also really have not been a huge fan of formal education my entire life. I feel that, you can achieve a lot just by self-taught manners of, taking on, learning. And so it was just something that I was begrudgingly involved in the beginning. And then I got into it. And before I got into it, I think what would spark my interest was just seeing so many folks around me that weren't having that same opportunity. And, I thought, okay, well, why not? At the very least, I have the time here. I'm being offered the opportunity. Let me just pursue it. So something that started as not a very passionate entry into higher education became something where I've, gone on to get a master's degree, and along the way becoming very enthralled with what is being done within me in my mind as I'm learning beyond the credits, right? It wasn't the accumulation of credits. It wasn't the degrees that I was getting. I have a business administration degree. I tell people all the time, like, get anything but a business administration degree. It's the most irrelevant degree you're going to get. So get something specific, but that's the one I had. And what I got from that, though, of massive value is in respect for and a habit of learning, a way of like understanding how to study for things, how to be organized in towards a goal of completing an assignment or a report or being ready for a test. And so all of those things I think are the most important within learning that I took, and that really became what for me was the most exciting, the most valuable, and the thing that I pitch to people when they talk about higher education or just education in general is don't always look at what necessarily what you think you're going to do with it. Look at what it's going to give you in terms of the discipline and the habits of curiosity and of inquisition and enlightenment, that will be a lifelong skill that will take you many places.
Beautiful. as we think about college and what the pursuit looks like on the inside, I think it'd be helpful for folks in the audience to kind of understand what are some of the challenges that folks encounter while trying to pursue education. Would either of you be willing to speak to, some of the challenges, but also some of the rewards of trying to pursue post-secondary education while incarcerated?
Sure. For me, it's been an evolution, and for many of us in here, it's been an evolution. When I first started my degree program, I didn't have access to Pell. And then that started to open up a little bit when they saw some successes in my participation. So then I had earned one of the very few coveted Pell spots. And fortunately now Pell has absolutely exploded, but it still isn't reaching far enough. So accessibility is a huge issue, especially when it comes to disparity between men's facility or men's unit and women's programming, because a lot of those resources are allocated to male populations. So it's difficult to kind of edge in on that action if you're a woman housed in a women's unit or a female facility. So that's one. Digital equity is another huge piece. Not having access to the internet is tedious and painstaking, and it makes the entire endeavor extremely cumbersome, but not impossible if you want it badly enough. And as Shannon was saying, it builds your resilience. But the idea of building resilience is to be able to overcome adversity, not to just live in adversity, right? So when you see that level of persistence and that level of success, that's definitely worth rewarding if you're an administrator, to make sure that you are streamlining that process to really optimize student success. So that's incredibly important.
So I can talk about the struggles both from the set of being formerly incarcerated, being incarcerated at the time and learning, and from the logistical bureaucratic barriers. So both of them were there heavily when I was getting my degree, and somewhat post-release, but not nearly as much as it was when I was inside. And I think you have the mental emotional barriers, and you have the system, right? And so for me, the system was the biggest part. I've said commonly that getting my degree was not as difficult as dealing with the system while I was getting my degree, for the amount of things that they would just put up in the way. The policies like you can't buy used textbooks, you can't borrow or lend textbooks to another student in the school, you can't get rented textbooks, like making me spend more money on textbooks that it just doesn't make any sense. Like no one does that. There were things where I remember one story where a fellow friend of mine was somewhere, he was asking a question, and it was about his like admissions and trying to figure out what's going on, and how he could pursue a class he was trying to take. And all that the individual he was talking to could say, why do you have that folder? Because it was a folder he wasn't supposed to have in that room. It's like, what is happening right now? So just a variety of these specific things that kind of we had to do as students, just to sometimes find a way around the rules, to just not have to spend hundreds of dollars and to be able to help each other to pass classes. Those were the things that stood out to me the most as the struggles. But then you have, of course, people deal with, can I do this? Am I smart enough to do this? I've never been treated as a human being. How do I see myself as a student, or as whatever this profession is gonna, be for me, if I can even get into it? So there's a myriad of struggles and obstacles that come to those that are incarcerated or have a record outside of the already existing struggles of being a student and pursuing higher education.
Thank you. Yeah, you're mentioning some things that I would love to bring up later in this chat around just the ability for education to build identity. And Shannon, I know you do a lot of work around building community and making sure that people are connected, and there's this sense of belonging that comes with feeling connected to the community. Can you speak a little bit about how important it is for us to have more events like this, where we can help folks on the inside remain connected to folks on the outside, and vice versa?
Yeah. So we have, two things at our organization where you do pre-entry work and correcting the narratives are the two pillars or two categories of projects we have. And the pre-entry is, everything is kind of semantical, pre-entry and correcting the narrative. Why not re-entry and changing the narrative? There's a purpose for that. Re-entry is focused on people usually the connotation of it is, and the way it operates, people that are close to release or post-release. And by that time, it's akin to educating a student when they're 17. Like, you've missed all the prior key time and years that you could really connect with an individual before they are about to enter adulthood or freedom. And correcting the narrative is because changing has a connotation of clothing or diets. It's one thing one day, it's another thing the next day or the next week. Changing also has a connotation of changing your mind for my benefit, right? Like, I want you to do something because it benefits me, not because it's true or it's helpful for, you. But correcting is math. 1 + 1 is 2, no matter where you go, anytime in history, anywhere in the world. So there's no debating that. It just says 1 + 1 is 2. Those of us that have a record have not been seen by society or by ourselves in the way that is accurate and in the way it ties into our actual potential. And so folks inside, I mean, for me, my personal story as I went through the system was tapping into my confidence, my self-esteem, my empowering myself, or being empowered by those occasionally that I met that were in a position to empower me. And what that set for me, similar to you said about the identity that education can help create, is it created a platform that for me now allows me to do so many things with a belief in myself, a belief that even if I can't achieve what this goal that I'm going towards is, I will be okay. Right? I will be able to take whatever consequences or loss happens there and figure something out, and I will be just fine. And so that comes from understanding your value, from respecting yourself, from knowing that you stand on the shoulders of people that have done so much to get you in this position. And all they want you to do oftentimes is just be happy, be content, like just to succeed as a human being existing in this world instead of being rich. And that was something that I really wanted to be able to give to people when I got out in the work that I was going to be a part of. And so our correcting the narrative work, or narrative work for organizations doing it across the country, ideally it's about that. It's about not just changing the way people see us, but the way we see ourselves, and the way that individuals that are inside, whether taking courses or not, that you start to get a sense of who you are as a human being and the value that you have, and that the things you can do if you lean into that value and you lean away from the shame and from the failure narrative and the pity narrative that people oftentimes use for us, that we then buy as well, right? They put it out there, and society's not the only one taking it. I think we're taking it more than anyone else. So it's that need for information, and that that structure around self-esteem and storytelling and how we tell our stories, that is so crucial in alignment with higher education programming and coursework.
That pity narrative is a real thing. I appreciate you naming that. I haven't even heard that term before or used like that, but I definitely have experienced that. And education kind of helped me overcome that. I want to continue on this piece around sense of belonging and community and connectedness, and even building identity, things like confidence. Victoria, I've had the opportunity to work with you over the past almost 2 years now, and you participated in a fellowship with us, and you were one of 2 first fellows that we've ever hosted that were currently incarcerated. And so, can you, would you mind speaking to what that experience of, participating in a professional capacity and using your education during incarceration, what that was like, and how if that benefited you, and how it did?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite subjects just because it was such a metamorphosis for me, that metamorphosis of self-image, of not only knowing I know what I know, but seeing myself do that, being able to practically apply that somewhere in life where it's not only welcomed, but valued. So being able to exercise those skills and to tangibly manifest that in a way that not only benefits me, but benefits others in the greater, broader community, and having that outlet to plug into. It's not just this stagnant, reserved energy that you're building by, indulging in some book learning in yourself, but it's a way to actually participate in the world in an extremely beneficial way. And for me, it helped me to build confidence. It helped connect me to people who could help pull me out of my shell, make me less shy, help reduce my reticence, to help me build my leadership capacity by being a little bit brave and taking some chances and feeling comfortable enough, not only with my team, but with the the greater HEP community to be able to be creative and make suggestions and to showcase my thoughts and opinions and work in a way that inspired my confidence, and it had me sit up a little straighter. It had me speak a little bit louder. And that was an indispensable part of my journey. In addition to that, I've gotten to meet so many wonderful people that I am so incredibly impressed by, people like Shannon and people like Chris Fanning and people who are really doing the work, because sometimes when you're doing that in your own little silo of your own facility, you feel so isolated, you feel alone, and it feels like you've got the whole world on your shoulders and you're just trying to make a difference. And it's a tremendous comfort to know that you're not alone, that there are so many people who want to improve these systems and who care about humanizing this experience and investing in human potential. And that's big. That's big because it lets you know that what you're doing matters. And other people think it matters too. So that's what they're doing. Um, this job not only has built my confidence, allowed me to step into a leadership role and to be able to compose the wonderful field guide that we'll be unveiling at some point soon in the future, a little bit of foreshadowing there. But to be able to make sure that I don't have a giant gap in my resume, that I have recent work experience that I can advertise to employers. So it's not just, hey, I'm a formerly incarcerated person who has this college degree, either playing into that pity narrative of let's tokenize this person for hire, or complete dismissal of, yeah, but what does that even mean? Is that the same as a regular education? It's not that black mark on your record. It's this person has been a part of the world and they've actually been participating. They didn't stop moving just because they were stuck in one place. They didn't stay stuck. So that's incredible. And also, this has helped me build a rather respectable bank account that I can use as my, cornerstone of financial stability going out into the world, so that I don't have to be forced to depend and to rely on other people, and so that I can actually contribute to society instead of having society completely support me while I feel lost.
Thank you both. I can say it's been an honor to work beside you, Victoria, and the work that you've done and contributed to our organization has been significant. You started out as a fellow and then you ended up, after a few months leading one of our biggest initiatives and a project and a resource that will be forthcoming in the next couple of months. It's in its final phases of being cleaned up. So really looking forward to making that available to the field. And it kind of speaks to this new era where technology is becoming more integrated inside the carceral space. And so with that, I'd love to kind of hear a little bit more about this new era and how we can start to think about higher education in prison as it relates to new levels of access to internet and what that means for being able to stay connected and be connected, and what sort of opportunities can come with that. I think one of the biggest apprehensions is the safety and security. I know that is a priority for corrections, and I think it's a priority for most of us, if not all of us. And so, what are some ways that we can think innovatively now that internet's becoming more accessible on the inside? What are some things that folks here on the call can take back to their folks and consider as they try to bring more access to internet and technology inside? Because we know that once people are released, they're going to be exposed to all levels of technology, and so the importance of making that available to folks on the inside is extremely helpful. So, Shannon, I know you've done some substantial work in reach, reaching folks on the inside in different ways. And so can you speak a little bit about, what that's been like and what are some of the obstacles as you try to connect with folks on the inside?
Yeah, of course. Our newsletter reaches about 8,400 people in the Wisconsin prison system. That's like maybe 40% of them. And the struggles that we've encountered come from the cost of sending physical mail in, of using a third-party mail vendor, which is what Wisconsin uses now. They come from censorship. We've had issues denied for things like Promotes Escape. I don't know how that's possible, but somehow, providing resources and information around like stories of empowerment around the country promotes escape apparently to someone. So just things in that realm have been some of the struggles that we've encountered. We haven't had much opportunity yet, really at all, to utilize technology as a modality for getting information inside. Our state is going to very soon, sometime early next year, have a new full rollout. They're in the process of it now, of the pay to play model, I call it, where everyone will get a tablet, but you have to pay to use it. They do have a fair amount of good free content, so I will say kudos to them on that part. That there are states I know where you can't get anything, I believe, unless you pay. And so they have been intentional about not making it so that you can't access it at all if you don't have any money. But in that becomes a new world for us to send our materials in and our content and a curriculum that we're building around community healthcare worker and storytelling, programming for people inside that is much not only easier and cheaper for us to get inside, but it's more accessible for everyone inside to have. It's not ideal to have programming just on tablets, of course. In person is the gold standard of any programming. But when you're dealing with prison and you're dealing with an environment like that, it becomes kind of problematic sometimes to have in-person based programming, because then if staff have an issue that day, or if there's COVID was a whole problem when that came up, everything shut down in different places. If you have some shakedown, if you have a matter of staff that can't make it, it makes it more difficult for us to continue the momentum of the educational programming. So having things where if we can't get in, we have something for you, having that modality. I personally think that's the best way of creating both avenues instead of just focusing on one. And that's something that I would like to see a lot more of an emphasis on, instead of just this sense of now we can get inside and now Pell's here, everything has to be in-person programming. Yes, that's great, but it shouldn't go away from some things that create accessibility truly to more people. When it comes to also connecting with people inside around any kind of information that we've had, there is this understanding that, if I use a story, there was a story one time about 3 years ago. There was a new higher education and prison program they were trying to make available in one of the 3 women's prisons that we have here. It's the only max. And they were saying, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. Very few women are showing interest in it. And there was kind of a sense of shock. Like if you provide, water to a thirsty individual, they're just going to drink whatever you give them for water. And my response was, no, I don't think that's surprising at all. You haven't made any of them think that the garments and mentality of a student, the path and the potential of a student, and what that means is something that a person that's incarcerated in your facility can wear, that they match with that. So why would you think suddenly giving them this thing is going to be something they'll grab onto? They've never been treated as, like I said, a human being. They're not going to see themselves as a student. So you have to build up to that. You have to have this aspect of, before we bring people in or we even think you're going to see yourself in this opportunity, that we're treating you in a way in which when the moment comes or when the opportunity comes, you're like, yep, I can do that, or I'm curious, or that's something I believe is worth my energy and my effort. So those are the things that I think we see as the very much bureaucratic logistical options and struggles that we have engaged with and found, but just the mentality of like, you have to make sure you're meeting people where they are at every time, instead of saying, oh, they don't want it, or oh, they're not worthy of this because they're not behaving the way that you think they should of somebody who's really going to be getting this opportunity, this great opportunity you're bringing, right? Like just change the way you frame that. It's more about just meet people where they are and understand that that same path and journey that we've all taken to get to where we are was on a structure of people who provided an avenue of confidence and of belief and of showing it can be done. And if they don't have that, why would you expect them to get to where you are if you had that? So those are the things that I think we've encountered around information and just that pathway and that understanding of how you get people to listen and pay attention and to understand what you're saying, isn't a matter of who they are. It's a matter of where they've been and how they've been treated up to this point.
Before you go, Victoria, something that you said really resonated, Shannon, and it was, in some of the conversations I've been having, I mean, with corrections, it seemed like some of them put themselves in the position or role of determining what somebody deserves. And it was really hard to hear that type of rhetoric, because that's not necessarily their job. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that as something that I think we should take note of. So Victoria, you want to share a little bit about, what are some innovative practices and ways that this new access to technology that's forthcoming can kind of shape what prison looks like, but also what college and prison can look like for folks?
Oh, absolutely. Um, and I feel very fortunate that I'm part of the main system because we have a lot of courageous administrators, both within the facility in the form of Warden Beal and Deputy Warden Chris Arbor, and in our, top of the ladder leadership, Randall Liberty and Laura Rodas in central office are really huge advocates for these amazing revolutionary kind of changes that we've implemented here in Maine. So I think the fact that they're consciously creating an ecosystem and a continuum surrounding education access and opportunity for residents for rehabilitative purposes is it's not necessarily a new concept, but it's undone, right? And I think we've kind of eased our way into what works and what doesn't. And they went into that with a keen understanding that there are going to be mistakes, there are going to be shortfalls. Sometimes you're going to give the opportunity to someone who's not quite ready for it, or they're going to make a mistake, they're going to fail. But you can pick yourself back up from that. And we can address that on an individual level to make sure that we're maintaining necessary security measures. And the fact that it's been such a collaborative process, I think that's absolutely critical. The fact that the MDOC is so willing to form partnerships with the Educational Justice Institute at MIT. I and one of our viewers, Katrina here, has been a TA for them for quite some time and engaged in debates with the NPDL and have worked with the Center for Effective Public Policy. Myself and Darlene George are policy advisors for them. And we're actually able to engage in the work because people approach our administration and have these conversations. This is what we're trying to do. This is what we're going to need to make it happen. And that collaboration is also part of our internal system. So as far as IT audits go, our tech team actually has been able to give people who are computer science majors here and people who are adept at coding the ability to kind of work on a lower level to help support them to expand their bandwidth so that they're not getting overwhelmed with the tech management and they can assist their peers, which is amazing. And that's kind of that mutually supportive symbiosis that we're looking for in systems like this, right? To make them sustainable. But it also builds trust. It builds the rapport between residents and staff so that we can start getting out of that us versus them prison mentality. And that's absolutely important. And I think it's definitely imperative that we start moving in that direction if we want to see sustainable successes.
Thanks, Victoria. I know Shannon, I know you had some internet issues over there, so hopefully it's working out a little bit.
Yeah, no, I heard the majority of it. It was a brief. Yeah, I don't know what happened, but
Of course, as we were talking about internet and technology, so right on cue.
It's
and
a
I'm here
problem
at the school
wherever
right
you
now.
go.
Yeah.
I'm at university right now.
I was, I just want to share a little bit about some of the things that we've done, especially with Maine and like Victoria, you were mentioning, folks working in IT. Something that we've really focused on is trying to find innovative ways for folks to connect to folks on the outside. Not just for the sake of connecting to community, but for folks to use their education in ways that are meaningful. And so we've re-granted money to different organizations who are willing to host incarcerated individuals as interns, as fellows, and pay them a prevailing wage for that work. And so that's something that we're really, aiming to do nationally. And we'd like to see, more of these types of initiatives pick up. And we anticipate that happening. And so we also have a partnership coming up with Kansas Department of Corrections where we'll be hosting an intern and paying them a prevailing wage as well. And so as time moves along, we plan on doing this at a larger scale and challenging some of these systems around slave wage labor and prison industry work that pays little to nothing. So just, talking about the ways that education can be used in different ways to just enhance a person's sense of meaning and purpose while on the inside, while also helping their reentry process be that much easier. We know that a few folks who we've worked with are going to be leaving prison with a substantial amount of money, and they'll be able to pay for their own housing. They'll be able to pay for their own transportation, and they made that money during incarceration. And they also paid taxes. So the folks who care about that, it's noteworthy. Okay, I know we only have like 10 minutes left. I really want to open it up for a Q&A. If anybody wants to use the Q&A function in the chat, feel free to drop questions there. And while we wait for questions to come in, I want to ask one more question. So this is for both of you. What do you think educators, administrators, policymakers, should understand about the importance of keeping, incarcerated folks connected with outside communities?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Victoria, I'm gonna go because I have no idea what's gonna happen at any given moment with this Wi-Fi situation. So I'm here. I'm gonna jump in this dance real quick. I think that the overall ideology that I would love to see shift is one of letting go of a sense of fake control, right? I think systems have this idea that they can control everything, and something happens and now let's change that, let's stop that, right? The amount of times that I've seen systems offer something and then take it away a year, a month later, or maybe sometime down the road, and then the excuse is, well, somebody messed it up. No, they didn't. Human beings are going to be human beings. You know that when you offered it, everything that then happened afterwards was predictable as puddles after rain. So you should have introduced it with the sense of these things are going to likely happen, not maybe, not we'll deal with it when it comes. It's going to happen. And how do we address that, but not take away it from everyone else just because of a few people, right? The 90-10 rule is what I call it, where they'll take away something that's benefiting 90% of the people in some significant way, just because 10% of the malefactors are like making it difficult. And then those 10% are going to find another way to do whatever they're doing in some other avenue, right? So you're not actually achieving anything. You're just limiting the ability for people to actually succeed and come home ready and be like very positive elements to the environment while they're incarcerated. So, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. And so I would love to see a mentality of how do we create and focus on investing in an environment where people are doing greater and better and able to go further than always wondering how can this one thing be used by somebody in a manipulative way. Like that's always going to happen. Every single tool that's ever been invented has been used for bad, but it's also been used for massive good. So how can we be more creative towards an asset strength building goal instead of always focusing on a deficit fear-based mentality that just keeps us from progressing in potential as human beings anywhere in the world?
Hmm. 90-10 rule. You need to trademark that. I feel like it's like 80 or it's like 99-1. Like one person does something and 99% of people get punished for it. That was modest. Victoria, how about you? What are some things that you think that administrators, policymakers can do to, or should think about to keep folks on the inside connected?
I mean, it's definitely noteworthy that dollar for dollar, higher education in prison is arguably the most effective crime prevention and recidivism reduction strategy, right? So within the United States, we currently spend $80 billion, that's billion with a B, per annum on incarceration. And we need to ask ourselves very seriously, are we getting our money's worth? Is this a good investment? Do I feel safer? Is life better? Is my community happier and stronger? And on the other hand, in a report released by the DOJ in 2013, which cited a Rand Corp meta-analysis, they found that for every dollar we invest in prison education, we save up to $5 in incarceration costs during the first 3 years of release, which are a critical window where 90% of rearrest post-release happen. So I think keeping that in mind, we need to decide if we're getting what we're paying for and if this is what we want to keep spending money on, or where we can employ justice reinvestment practices in order to support humanist values, to inspire people towards self-actualization, and to give people the opportunity to reframe their life experience. Because I know for me, before I got engaged in this work, before I was able to attend college, before I expanded my social network and my professional network, and I got to work remotely from prison, I didn't think very much of myself. And the only people I knew were no better off than I was. And sitting in a day room of people with the same life experiences as me, we didn't know how to help each other. It's when you break that cycle and you really broaden your perspective and have access to people who can show you new parts of the world and new ways to be and to live. That's that healthy social contagion that we'd like to spread, right? And that's that strength and that love of community building. So I think it's important to make sure that we're not isolating and concentrating that prison mentality, so that the only people you have access to are people who don't know how to help you out because they're so in pain and they're so traumatized and they can't access opportunity. It's people who can help pull you up out of that hole and who are strong enough and who can show you the way.
Thank you. It's always hard to speak after Victoria. Um, I'm just, again, honored to kick off this first conference that we're doing like this, with a session like this, to really ground what's going to take place in the next couple of days and some collective values and understandings about the importance of this work, and the importance of us to not just uphold things as they are, but for us to think forward in ways that we can, enhance the experience. And so, I appreciate you both sharing your insights, and thank you to everybody who's here in attendance right now. It looks like there's about 160 people in the audience. And so, I don't see any questions coming. I think I see one.
Rush has one.
Cool. Okay. I don't know why I can't see them, but feel free to field questions as you see them come through.
I don't have a tremendous amount of experience with this, but I do have a little bit of knowledge. The question is, can you discuss the process and benefits of prior learning agreements between HSE programs and post-secondary education? So I do know that in Maine recently, one of the rather unexpected kind of fringe benefits of the pandemic was that a hefty investment was made to help people attain their high school equivalency, so towards high sets. And anyone who had graduated their high set, incarcerated or not, within a time frame, so after I think it was 2020, 2021, something like that, was eligible to receive 2 years of free community college. And that, of course, if you want to extend your degree, is transferable credit to a 4-year degree program at a university. But I think that that is, just enough to be able to get people in the door and to pave that pathway between a high set and between university that increases accessibility and equitability, right? Because if you don't know anything about Pell and you're not well connected and you don't have deep pockets, that might be a hard direction to be able to find by yourself. So I know that our prison here in Maine capitalizes on that, and when people do graduate their high sets, then we have a partnership with a local community college that accepts a lot of students using that funding.
And if I could answer the other questions, then so I can tag team these before time is out. I see one from Gina about what are some of the examples of strength-based, programming to do a better job of helping individuals grow instead of worried about the fear that they might do something wrong with it. I've seen, so I just came back from a trip in Europe where we visited several prisons, and me and a colleague of mine were in LA about a week and a half ago, seeing some of the stuff they're doing at universities. And California has a lot of really robust programs for people that are out and inside. So it was encouraging to see those models, but also everything is comparative, right? Like Wisconsin, it's a different world. We're not going to get the level of money that California gave their university system from our current legislature right now. In Europe, we're not going to just have the same societal view of people that have a record that we have in America. It's just a little more complicated in that way. But the models are there, and I would say as simple as anything that is done for people out in the world, we can do for people in prison. and starting from a point of how do we do this instead of no, we can't because it's never been done. Like the amount of conversations I've had with systems folks where before you're out with your question fully, they're shaking their head because their mind is just so ready to say no to everything. That's the problem. So I would say it can be as simple as that. Whatever you are seeing that's possible out in the world, that can be done in the prison system. And the question should be, how can we do that instead of it can't be done because it's never been done.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge that we're coming up on time. I see a couple of more questions. I saw one about what's the process to get wages for currently incarcerated individuals. The processes are vastly different in each state and facility. Please reach out to us. I'd love to chat with you to share more about what that processes look like for us and some of the work that we're doing to kind of challenge or at least, make those opportunities available. So I wish this session could go on. And I also, just want to state that we have a break for about an hour. So as much as I don't practice this inside of our org with myself specifically, I don't believe in back-to-back meetings. And so there's a nice hour break until the next session. So hopefully folks can take a break, get some food, reflect on some of these opening remarks. And we look forward to seeing you in attendance for the rest of the session. Some of them are pre-recorded, some of them are live. There's different types of configurations for this because we're working with corrections and there's all sorts of restrictions. So I just want to ask that folks have understanding and grace for the fact that it is extremely difficult to make it possible for folks on the inside to connect to the outside, at least for now. And so hopefully the work that we're doing will make it a little easier. So again, Shannon, Victoria, thank you so much for participating today. I look forward to seeing you both in person soon. And Victoria, I know you're close to coming home, so can't wait to see you in person as well. So thank you everybody for attending this opening session, and we look forward to seeing you over the next couple of days.
Thank you. It's good to meet you, Victoria. Thank you all for putting this on the lines.
Great to meet you too, Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon. Let's keep correcting the narrative.
Indeed.